on this episode of Edge of the Web.
Listings will show up and they are brand new. They have virtually no citations, no backlinks. Half of them don't even have websites attached to them. And they'll rank simply based on the fact that they're close to the user and they're usually named after a keyword. You know, these listings shouldn't have any authority. They're brand new and you can't get rid of them. You could have 8, 9 different accounts, submitted as spam, but because it's verified, it stays. It just pens in there unless you report it to Google.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, alongside Tom Broadbeck, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right, so welcome to Edge of the Web. Thanks for joining us today on our live cast. And for everybody who's listening on the iTunes and Google Play and all the audio aggregators out there, thanks for listening to us. We're broadcasting from Edge Media Studios every Thursday at 3 p.m., so we certainly want you to join into the live stream and ask some questions of our guests. We're broadcasting from downtown Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're focused on bringing you the latest marketing news in the digital frontier, as well as talking to marketing influencers from around the planet. That's what we do, and that's who we are. Check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We're powered by Site Strategics, the title sponsor of the show, as well as our organization here and the parent organization of Edge. And we're agile marketers, pioneers in the agile methodology, which is results-based marketing and nimble marketing at that. Be able to change as we test. That's what you need from a digital marketing provider, and that's what we do. So you can always give us a shout and contact us at 877-SEO for Web or 877-736-4932, 877-736-4932, and contact us. We're happy to have a free consultation, our conversation about what's happening on your website, your digital assets, the digital weight that you have out there, and possibly give you some action items right then and there. And if we can possibly help you, we might be able to do some work together. So contact us there or go over to Site Strategics, SITE strategics.com. You can chat with me right there, or a semblance thereof. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. I'm the CEO of Site Strategics and founder of Edge Media Studios. To my left is, again, the indomitable Tom Broadbeck, Director of Digital Media. Sir.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Absolutely. And tell us, Tom, why do we do this show?
We do the show for, do you want the real reason? I don't know where. No, we do the show. It's a great way for us to meet new people, and we always have new guests on, and we just want to learn from them to not only boost up our own SEO game, but be able to provide that value to our clients.
Absolutely. So what you're saying is we're introverts. We're introverts, and this is the only way we actually want to get to know people, right? Because we really don't network that often, so we just bring them into our home.
Yeah, and that gives us valuable content.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. So let's introduce our guest, who's our next friend. How about that? Isn't that creepy? That's a little bit creepy, isn't it? Joy Hawkins, owner of Sterling Sky Inc. How you doing, Joy?
Good. How are you?
We're good. Getting a little bit weird here, but hey. It's
what
part of the course. It's what happens. It's slowly but surely it goes downhill from there. Joy, you're hailing from Canada. Where are you, and what's cool about your city?
So I actually live in the country. So I guess I don't live in a city technically, but I live about 45 minutes north of Toronto, which is probably where most listeners would be familiar with. But I live in the middle of nowhere, so country. We went with the bigger house on like a actual property versus tiny little space in the city.
Rocking that, yeah, absolutely. My wife and I have been eyeballing after the kids get a little bit older, so we can get them out of school, going further east outside of the belt and get some property. Do you have chickens? Chickens?
No, God, no. Yeah, no, I don't do like the whole farming thing. I just
goats?
wanted something for my kids to play. No.
Fine. Well, I'm just kind of showing my cards. That's what we're looking at. Fresh eggs every day.
Retirement Aaron.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I have enough land to hunt on, right?
Yeah. Hunt chickens.
Chickens. Have you tried to hunt a chicken? Man, that's freaky work, man. They run.
I bet.
They run. Okay, now that I've disturbed the entire audience out here, every week we actually go over digital news of the current week. So, Joy, you've been prepped and ready to go. Are you ready to take a dive into the digital marketing realm?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's take you through the latest digital marketing news.
I was very excited to start my reportings.
This week's trending topics.
Okay, so we're doing a little bit of local focus as the shows about local SEO today from Search Engine Journal by Matt Southern. Always bringing some great content over there. Google My Business lets users create custom short URLs. So what we're talking about here is Google is now letting users create customized short URLs for Google My Business listings. Google is calling these custom URLs short names, and it appears only some businesses have actual access to them. However, it's definitely more than just a test feature because the Help Center article already exists out there. So Ben Fisher shared an example on Twitter. You can see if you look on the screen at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see there's no way to zoom in there, but if you look at it, you can see the short. I'm sorry. Where is that?
His short name is Steady Demand.
Steady Demand. Oh wow.
So it's the @ sign. If you can see it there in the tweet of the there you go. Click on the tweet and So the short name, the little icon, it looks like an @ sign. Almost maybe it's a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Can't tell, but it's like an @ sign. So essentially, you create your own short name, and then with that, you can do to pull up the profile. You can type in the Google in the URL g.page / your short name to pull up that local listing. So it's great as well if you wanted to. We do it a lot with clients to give them a quick link to post a review. So a lot of times we put it in the footer. It's like leave us a review. That URL is sloppy.
Yeah,
to get that to appear.
G.page, but
well, not this one, but this makes it a lot easier. I'm saying the original way we would do it is a little bit sloppy and had to put some the question mark equals and some weird code at the end. But now you can just put for that link g.page / your custom short name / review, and then it will pop up and a link to leave a review.
And it's smart because that's been desperately needed. And we've been using bit.lys and shorteners we have clients that have put their local GMB on a business card or something like that. And this has a vanity naming convention to it, which is fantastic. And I mean, if there's anything to kind of mop out of maybe Google Plus is this type of naming convention, so we can actually have an asset. It's been really tough trying to even find the Google My Business address for a lot of businesses. So this gives a really good convention. I think this is going to stay around for a long time. Joey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely much needed. And now that Google Plus is gone, I think they finally have a good opportunity to introduce some new features. We saw this when Google Plus was around, right? They had a custom URL. So we're just waiting. I'm a volunteer on the Google My Business forum, and we're all thinking how long it's going to take before people are going to start arguing about, oh, my custom URL isn't available.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
There used to be a big problem back in the Google Plus days, right? Like, it's great for people that get on it right away, but if someone else grabs your name or whatnot, that can always be fun to deal with.
So I'm wondering, because Google My Business is doing a lot of validation and verification now. Well, I should say Google in the local services area, and there's a lot of prime focus on the local real estate now. I'm thinking that you probably have to go through a few hoops to get that name, or at least have it protected by your brand, as opposed to just being able to register names out there. What do you think about that?
Currently, it's just you register what you want to register.
Oh,
so,
all right, go to town, folks.
Yeah, if you want your brand name, better go get it. If your last name's Smith, better go.
It's similar to Twitter, I guess, right? You set up a Twitter account, you can, get whatever Twitter handle you want if it's available, right?
Yeah.
So, very similar. I don't think there's any specific steps you have to go through to get a specific name. It's just if it's available or not.
Boy, we're opening up a whole nother Squatterville right now. Everybody's going to be registering.
Right?
Yeah, I'm saying that was ugly for a long time. Speaking of ugly, from Android Police, from Corbin Davenport, AMP stories will roll out to mobile Google search soon. So if you're not familiar with what AMP mobile stories are, Google has for a number of years taken from publishers their content, put on a Google CDN, where they actually help in the expediency of content, for lack of a better word. They'll actually present your content very fast, and you can really capitalize on that by having an AMP plugin, be able to create AMP content that will be picked up by Google. So Google certainly has doubled down on the AMP side for news and publishing, and they didn't encroach into the mobile side of things up until now. So now we have another piece of real estate out there. I mean, and the article really starts with love it or hate it. And truly, I just can't stand AMP. I'm sorry. Sorry, Google. As they're expanding faster than ever. It's no longer just an optimized way to make mobile web pages. It now powers interactive content in Gmail, AMP Stories, a way of creating interactive news stories. And they announced over a year ago, and it's about to roll out the mobile side for everyone. They actually announced at today's AMP conference event in Tokyo that AMP Stories will roll out to the Google search, appearing in a dedicated block of results. Stories will first be displayed for searches related to travel and other stories that will soon follow later. So these AMP Stories are not just AMP News; they're actually AMP Story content, and they're going to be making their way straight into the mobile aperture. So not only do we have a slowly more and more encroachment of the Google real estate on the Google SERP, but now we have that additional AMP area that's going to be rolling out as well.
Yeah, yeah. If you've ever watched an Instagram story, they're in Facebook now. The Facebook stories as well. I don't know if you can go back to the article there and click play on the video, so it'll show some examples of what they look like. But a lot of them look like interactive infographics. And so they're kind of cool. One of them was blanking on the topic now, but it was just an animated. So this one's about college football. Obviously the news can take a good portion of it, but there was one that just looked like an animated infographic. And so you can scroll through. So there's the top 10. I can't read it. Top 10 people of the year to follow, and so I could see all these list posts. There's the animated infographic thing I was talking about there. So I could see how some businesses could create these custom stories and really take up a lot of the SERP landscape with it.
Yeah, but I mean it's Google Sandbox, right? Sure. And if they're seeing the value, if the consumer's seeing the value of that, then we just have to play along. Joy, where's our real estate going in mobile?
Oh, well, see, I know on the local side of things, so when we're dealing with like small businesses, AMP isn't huge yet. Like the majority of small businesses, I would say, are not utilizing AMP because it's still, a lot focused on publishers and things like that if you're, writing news and whatnot.
Sure.
We've had like a small handful of clients that have tried AMP, and I know there's a lot of challenges with it from a conversion standpoint. A lot of their forms. Yep. Buttons and things like that. It's hard to transition those over. So we personally don't do a lot with AMP yet, but I definitely think it's something to keep on the radar. And
you can go ahead and say it, Joy. You're anti-AMP. It's okay. You're among friends. We really don't do a whole lot. I don't even use AMP for my own. I blog a lot, so I probably should, but we don't at the moment. See, what the heck is it used for? So I know what they're trying to do, but it was just, I've been talking about this for years. It was just an overreach that really got it's like a burr under my saddle. I just didn't like it. But there's
it's just another, like, I don't know, I think it was Eric Enga that said it on the show a while back. At SEO, SEO's got to stop thinking about just ranks within Google. SEO has become how you can get the most traffic from Google. Whether it's local, whether it's rankings, whether it's AMP stories, whether it's whatever tool that they're going to throw out there next.
Just leveraging all the tools.
Leveraging all the tools that you can that make sense for your business and make sense for your users. And so if it's an opportunity if you're a publisher listening, this is something you should definitely be looking into, I think, because they're going to be promoting it heavily.
No, you better believe it.
You get a lot of it. I mean, Facebook does it, Instagram does it. People are used to it by now, and I can see how it can just be a common way to read news now.
All right, I'll give you that. All right, so from Search Engine Journal, last piece of news on our list today, Yoast SEO. And if you don't know what that is, WordPress users, you better go check it out because it is one of the, if not the core optimization tool for WordPress. They become the first WordPress plugin to offer defragmented schema markup. This is from Matt Southern as well. The popular plugin is releasing an update which offers defragmented implementation of schema markup. What makes that is a first of its kind update that actually cleans up the fragmented mess created by most schema implementations. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, schema is a little bit meta of old, so to speak. It's the new way to communicate what the intent of the content is to the search engines, primarily Google, but they all scoop it up. And there are 200, 300 different schema types that you can use for reviews, product reviews, contributions to journals. And there's so many podcasts and broadcast. There's so many different types of schema out there, but it gets messy, and they all don't play well in the WordPress ecosystem. So they give an example of what the schema implementation does. If a page has 8 pieces of schema markup, it's often unclear to the search engine how they're related to each other. So that's also across the entire site, not just the pages, right?
Correct.
So here's what there's a screenshot, if you can bring that up real quick, of an error-free schema markup tool. Looks like in Google's structured data tester when it's implemented, and we can actually throw that link on the show notes. The data tester itself, you'll see right there. Oh, pull that back up again. There you go. So you've got scroll back up for a second. There we go. So you got web page, WP sidebar, WP header, website, creative work, WP footer, review, site navigation elements. All these are telling what parts of the page are to Google, and it's clean, but there's still 8 individual items, and search engines will need to figure out how they're related to each other. So this tool actually helps be able to consolidate this into one schema, as I'm reading here. Mm-hmm. With multiple aspects to it. You can see that the main entity of the page is an article, and the article is part of a web page, and which is part of a website. So it's actually hierarchical structure in that tag as opposed to disparate tags all over the page. So there's some deep data there, but Yoast is, and if you're not using Yoast Premium, jump in there, and I highly recommend using Yoast for these markups, and especially the local side of things. Yoast is a great tool for that. But Joy, you're dead in that space right there. So do you use Yoast? And obviously you use schema on a regular basis, right?
Yeah, we use Yoast for almost every single site that we work on. Yep. So huge fan of the tool. I think it's just easier and simpler to use than any other alternative. Mm-hmm. When it comes to schema, we are really adamant about only marking up stuff if it actually makes a difference visually in the search results. Mm-hmm. So, we focus mainly on things like reviews, because obviously that makes a big difference, and like certain fields that are used in schema that actually show up in the search results. Those are the things we try to keep our attention on.
Very good. Very good. So we're going to be unpacking a lot of local SEO tips and techniques today, so stay tuned. But what we do want you to jump into right now is the Edge newsletter. So join us every week as we send you out the Edge newsletter. You can text to the number 22828, the word Edge Talk. Don't do it while you're driving, and you can join right there. And what we're doing is sending out great information about who we're going to be interviewing, who we just interviewed, some news items, and much more. So join us as join the Edge Nation, right? And jump in there and contribute. Let us know how we're doing on that side of things, because we really want to be able to give those VIP members some great content regularly. So with that, you can also go over to edgeofthewebradio.com and join our newsletter right there. Right, Tom?
That's right.
All right. So follow all our featured training topics over at edgeofthewebradio.com. But now let's deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Joy Hawkins, owner of Sterling Sky.
So the deep voice guy introduced you, Joy.
Sorry?
No, the deep voice guy. She didn't catch the deep voice guy. We do the deep voice guy for every guest. It's kind of like the movie credits coming in. Anyway, you'll hear it in post. How about that? Let's introduce Joy to our listeners and our watchers. Joy has been working in the local SEO industry since 2006, and that's laudable in its own right, and is a top Google top contributor. She's also has a monthly column on Search Engine Land and is a top contributor to Moz Local Search Ranking Factors Survey. So she knows her stuff, ladies and gents. Joy is also the author of Local Use Expert Guide to Local SEO, an advanced training manual for people wanting a detailed look at what it looks like and what it takes to succeed in the local SEO space. Now, this has been changing ever so much. Local is getting huge, and the real estate in the search engine SERP result is certainly a battleground of local mashup of references. And on top of that, reading intent of the buyer. This is your realm. Give us a conceptual model of what local SEO is for our audience.
Yeah, so I mean, local SEO is any business that gets their customers locally, right? So that would rule out if you're an online business and you ship iPhones, nationwide. You're not a local business. You have an audience that's all over the country. But if you are a dentist or a plumber or a lawyer, for example, and all of your customers are from within like the immediate area that you live in or serve, that would be, that would fall into the realm of local search.
Yep. And there's a lot of content adjustments that you can make to be able to take advantage of local SEO and local search. But there's also a lot of local underpinnings, local real estate that you can claim, first and foremost being the Google My Business, and we'll certainly unpack that here in a moment. But you recently wrote a blog here about common myths when it comes down to editing your Google listing on Google Maps. So you debunk a number of them. The first one that you talk about is actually about competitors editing your listings. It's not as easy for a competitor to actually edit your own business listings, right?
Yeah, it definitely happens, but I think it's become more difficult than it used to be. So, let's compare this to like years ago. Google has made it extremely hard for just a regular user to remove a listing, for example, or mark that it doesn't exist, or change the business name. Like it definitely used to be a lot easier than it is currently.
So what were they doing to manipulate that? Were they just going to the suggest and edit function within Google My Business, and then why would Google approve that, I guess?
Well, I mean, I try not to divulge too much that the black hat people like to do, because I'm like, I don't want to give tips on how to spam. Sure. But like, I know we used to see, multiple edits go through. We still see it quite a bit in certain industries. Like I always give the personal injury attorney industry as an example, because if you look in Los Angeles, for whatever reason, one of the spammiest cities we've seen. Usually you'll see pending edits to all kinds of listings that are clearly malicious in nature, for people trying to change their categories, to trying to change their hours. Like there are certain things that are easier, I guess, for people to update than others. But it's not as easy as it used to be. I know, in the map maker days, we used to see all kinds of crazy stuff going on and people submitting edits to different things. And it used to be a lot easier for it to go through than it is now.
I am certainly glad to hear that. I actually have a horror story of my own in the Google My Business section. An ex-employee of an organization that had the keys to the car from a Google listing standpoint went at this Google listing and just tore it up and threw a lot of salacious stuff in that content. And they reached out, and I was able to give them some assistance to be able to lock that out, clean it up. But my gosh, it's like writing graffiti all over the front of the building, and because they're authenticated, because they're the admin on the account, it was just there, and so part of the housekeeping of your Google My Business is making sure that the correct people actually have access to that GMB, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You should definitely know who all the authorized users are, and if anyone leaves or quits, removing them, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. No, it was terrible. It was can't even begin to say what was on that thing. They're sending, they threw in a new link, and actually it was a ex vendor that was kind of extorting them for some money as well. So, man, yeah, it got real ugly real quick. Another myth that you debunk is having a higher local guide level does not mean you'll get more edits published. So, talk to us about the local guide level first. Can you tell us what that actual moniker is?
Yeah. So this is one I see SEO companies use a lot. It drives me insane, but they'll be like, oh yeah, we can help you because we're a level 8, we're a level 7 local guide and all this stuff. And it's, there's some truth to it. Obviously, like the more you edit, the more that your edits get approved, the more trusted you are. But even at like, I know a guy who is a level 10 and, was a mapmaker regional lead alongside myself back in the day. So that's what that means for people that aren't familiar with it. They were like this group of individuals that Google gave the most trusted status to. Like we would basically have the ability to approve or deny the majority of edits on Google, just like Googlers. But it was amazing. I loved it. But like I know a guy who's in that group. He's a level 10. He had over 100,000 edits on Google Maps. Okay. So like, wow. I don't know where he found the time. Definitely way more than I have. And even listings that I would send to him and I'd be like, okay, can you, I'd find a fake listing and I'd say, can you remove this? And see what happens. Like even those listings that are fake, that should be gone, even he can't get rid of them. So I think what we've kind of seen as a trend is that if a listing is verified through Google My Business for whatever reason, that gives it an insane amount of trust. So there's two sides to this. It's a good thing because for legitimate businesses, it's making it, that first statement true, where it's harder for competitors to get rid of your listing just by reporting it. But on the flip side, we see that it's very difficult to get rid of spam these days without involving Google My Business, like sending it directly to them, which is frustrating. Like it used to be a lot easier for the mass user base to report spam that way. So it's pros and cons.
So the efforts, how you become a Google guide is continually contributing into the space, reviews and what have you, right?
Yeah, it's definitely like important, but it's just not the end all be all. Like if you're a level 10, it doesn't mean you somehow have magical powers and you're just going to be able to do whatever you want. Which is what I've heard a lot of SEO companies kind of make it sound that way. Like, ooh, we're this level and we're super special and important. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like you have the same amount of power as someone, usually that's, just started. Like you might have a fraction more, but yeah.
I keep on thinking about the Scientology and the different levels that you can get up. The Scientology.
Is level 10 the highest local guide you can get?
Unbelievable, right? Yeah. The difference, the higher you go, the difference is insane too. Like even the difference between a level 8 and a level 9 is crazy. Like it's really easy to get to like, I think level 6. Above and beyond that, it's, you have to do a lot at it. And then the higher the levels go, the bigger the gap between them. So, I mean, level 10 is like crazy. Like if you get to a level 10, you've done a lot. And I'm a level 8. I don't know how long it'll be before I'm a level 9, but it'll be a while. Like I think I'm like 30,000 edits away. But yeah, it's quite a lot.
Wow. All right. Well, just all right. Oh, I can't even.
Yeah.
So sorry, I want to stick to this local guide for a second. What can you do as a level 10 that you can't do as like a level 6? Nothing?
Nothing.
You can
Okay,
say
it's just a label.
You can say that you're a level
really
10.
don't mean a lot.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a bragging right. Bragging, I don't know about what, but I've heard people complain that Google incentivizes local guides. I'm like, what incentive? Like you get like I think a free movie on Google Play. Like, woohoo!
There we go.
Oh,
$3.
Yeah. I know, right?
You understand, at level 10, you're enlightened. You are the enlightened mapmaker local guide. Oh, my gosh. All right.
You have a lot of time on your hands. That's what it means.
You have another myth regarding the likeliness of an edit published has more to do with the listing you're editing than the user that's editing it. Is this why spam actually is so prevalent in the Google Maps?
It's exactly why it is. So as I was saying, this is both good and bad, right? So for example, we will see a listing for, it's usually their lead gen. So, a company creates a listing on Google Maps and then they sell the leads to real businesses.
Sure.
So these businesses unknowingly are buying leads from people that are actually pushing their own business out of the results, right? It's kind of a interesting scenario, but these listings will show up and they are brand new. They have virtually no citations, no backlinks. Half of them don't even have websites attached to them. And they'll rank simply based on the fact that they're close to the user and they're usually named after a keyword. These listings shouldn't have any authority. They're brand new.
Right.
They have no third parties showing that they're any trust or validation of them. And you can't get rid of them. You could have 8 9 different accounts, submitted as spam, but because it's verified, it stays. It just pens in there unless you report it to Google. So it's like using a Google My Business method, which I kind of touch on later in the article. But yeah, it's like a lot of it has to do with the listing, and the verified status definitely adds a huge layer of trust in Google's eyes, which is both a good and a bad thing. But it has a lot more to do with that than like whether it's me submitting the edit or you or, someone who's never done editing before.
Sure. That's scary, but it's also great to be able to hear that there's a cleanup tool, and Google is paying more and more attention to these reports of spam, reports of user photos making it to somebody's Google page. Right? They're quite responsive now, aren't they?
They are responsive. I think the frustrating thing is that I feel like spammers are usually, about 10 steps ahead of Google. So they do act on them when you're reported, but depending on how obvious it is, I've had to go through pretty great lengths at some point to show Google and prove to them that a listing is not a real business. And unfortunate that it takes so much effort on my part or anyone's part doing this.
Yeah, you were kind of doing Google's job for them in a particular manner, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
there's a sector of people that argue that we shouldn't do it because, it's Google's job and like, why are we doing their job for them? And that I don't personally think that's a smart thing at all, because I'm like, if spam is ranking my client, of course I'm going to get rid of it. Why would I keep it there?
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact of the matter is they've provided this tool free of charge. And this tool gives us a lot of value out there. A lot of ways to communicate to that consumer based on their intent to buy. So, housekeep your own backyard, so to speak, right? Or anyway, fourth item on here, Google My Business suspensions. Let's talk about that for a second. Google My Business suspensions don't seem to weaken a listing's authority. So how does a listing get suspended?
Yes, there's one of two ways. Either a listing gets suspended because it's like a manual takedown. So someone reports a listing to Google, says, this violates your policies. Google will manually take it down. I'm sure they also find them themselves. I don't know. Theoretically, they should. But there's also ones that are automatic, right? So sometimes you'll see this where if you are in a spammy industry, like a locksmith, a drug rehab, or a personal injury attorney, for example, and you're doing too many edits to your listing inside the Google My Business dashboard, it can instantly trigger a suspension. So there are certain automatic ones in play, and then there are manual ones. But regardless of how it happens, there's 2 different levels of suspensions. One is like your listing is completely gone, like you don't exist anywhere on Google Maps, you don't rank anywhere, your listing doesn't exist. And then there is a more like an account level suspension where the listing is still there, but you no longer have the ability to manage it through the Google My Business portal.
Oh, wow. And is that permanent?
Yes and no. So you have to get it appealed. It depends on who you are, what you were doing. So that's always the tricky part, right? So just like, I guess it's similar to manual action penalties. Somewhat similar. But Google doesn't tell you what rules you broke. So often the frustrating thing for businesses is they have no idea what they did wrong, so they don't know how to fix it. So they'll go through like all these circles and trying to, appeal a suspension, and they'll kind of go through this never-end cycle where Google will say, sorry, you violated guidelines. So we get a lot of people that reach out to us for help because they have no idea what they did, and they're like, I can't get my listing appealed. And then we look at it and we're like, oh, you're doing this. It's easy for us because we look at it all day long, right? But for an average business owner, it can be very frustrating.
Oh, wow. And what kind of horror stories have you experienced with getting Google listing out of the doghouse, so to speak?
Yeah. So one of the worst cases, I think, was a locksmith I helped years ago, and Google was very convinced that they were not a real business, and it took months, to get it appealed. I mean, that is not normal. We finally were able to get them to lift the suspension, but that's probably the worst case I think I've ever had, where Google was convinced that they were somehow involved in some type of fraudulent activity.
Wow.
And it took a lot of going back and forth.
Yeah. How did you, what were some of the things you had to include to prove they're a legitimate business, like letterhead, addresses, bills, that type of stuff?
Licenses. I mean, in this case, actually, we were lucky, I would say, because Street View actually showed an image of their car parked at the address that they had listed. Okay. So
There you go.
That was helpful. But yeah, like it's tough, right? Because I think the frustrating thing is that people unfortunately lie a lot, and the lengths that people will go to make it look like they actually exist somewhere that they don't, just to get a listing, just to get traffic, has made it very hard for some legitimate businesses to get their listings reinstated. So it kind of sucks, right? Because I feel like people that lie and spam make it harder for all of us, and frustrating.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of spammy pages, the more reviews, another myth that you are debunking here, the more reviews a listing has, the harder it is to get rid of. If you report a spammy page, has a ton of reviews, how is Google not picking up on this? How long does it actually take for Google to actually remove that?
Yeah. So again, if you report it to Google My Business directly, they will get rid of it. But if you are a user submitting an edit, even if the listing's unverified, if it has like 80 or 90 reviews, Google's a lot more likely to believe that is a business that existed. And this is, both good and bad again, because a lot of times it is a signal that the business existed if they have a lot of reviews. But,
right.
Again, usually when you have fake listings, you also have fake reviews. So I saw a drug rehab listing the other day in Philadelphia that had 105 reviews on it. And you look at Street View for it, and it's a, not a parking lot, but almost looks like a dump. I don't even know what's there, but it's most definitely not a drug rehab. And it's sad. That's probably the sickest industry I think we see fake, listings in. Really? It's come on, you're dealing with people's lives here.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But yeah, they had 100 and some on fake, obviously all fake reviews. It's not a real drug rehab.
Oh my gosh.
But that's quite common. But yeah, there is definitely a tie between reviews and trust on a listing, unfortunately. Good and bad thing.
So, I mean, the second part of that question, how long does it take Google to remove one of those if they have a solid history of reviews that still are spammy, but they've got the numbers? Have you been able to clock any type of standard pattern there?
Yeah, I'll tell you what we found turnaround time. So if we use suggest an edit on a listing, normal turnaround time is I think I mentioned this in the article. It's somewhere in the range of 6 to 8 weeks usually. 2 to 3 months, right?
Right.
Ridiculous. But anyways, that's the current backlog. If we use the Google My Business redressal form, so this is a form that is fairly new in the last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they came up with the name of it, but this actually sends it straight to the Google My Business team. And in those cases, when we submit those forms, usually we see a turnaround time of 2 weeks. That's for listings that have violations on it. For fake reviews is a whole nother matter.
Right.
Fake reviews are unfortunately a pretty bad turnaround time. Usually we are looking at on a good case 4 weeks, and in a not so great case 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Well, still, at least they're responsive. It's not like you're taking 6 months to a year to purge this out. At least they're knowing they have their responsibility, and they're paying attention to organizations such as yourself to help them keep their own noses clean, so to speak. All right, edits that are reviewed by machines and humans. That was another point that you brought up in the article. So, how do we know which is reviewing our edit, and on top of that, how long does it take for a human to actually execute an approval as opposed to a machine?
Yeah, so you'll usually know if it was machine because it'll get approved or denied within minutes, right? So normally we're talking let's say 20 minutes or less than that. When it's reviewed by a human being, it's something where it takes a lot longer than that. So, again, depending on how you're sending it in, it would be either weeks to months, just depending. All
right. We lost video. Oh,
there it is.
She's back.
We were going to say we lost video there for a second of you, so that, but we still got you on audio, so we're good there.
All right, but you're back. And the last one that we wanted to cover here, published edits to remove listings disappear from your edits tab. Unpack that for a second.
Yeah, so this is something that we kind of stumbled across, but I found confusing at first because, we'd look at listings, and we were like, well, I know I submitted this listing, but the edits tab that you see in your local guides account does not actually include all the edits you've made, because I think once the listing actually gets removed from Google's database publicly, it also gets removed from your edit history as well.
Got it.
Which is something that didn't used to be the case when Mapmaker was around. So, if you're new to editing, this would be somewhat confusing to be like, where did that edit go? I don't see it anywhere in my history. Usually they will email you when, you've done an edit and it's gone live or been published. You normally get an email notification. So that's kind of helpful for keeping track. Someone commented on my article, and I thought this was kind of neat. They said when they report listings that are spam or fake, they actually save them first to a list on Google Maps so that they can go back later and they can still see them in there, which I thought was kind of funny. They have like this fake listings list in their
just for proof. Yeah, just for proof that we actually did what we did, right?
Yeah, it's creative. I mean, we keep a record. So we internally here, when we're like doing this for clients and stuff, we have a spreadsheet and we'll keep the links to them because every single listing has a unique ID number on it called a CID number. Right. And we keep a record of all of those so that we have like history. That way, if like a listing gets reinstated later on, we'll know if it's the same listing or if it's a new one.
So if you're close to getting to level 10, are you saying that you shouldn't be reporting spam because then you'll lose all those edits?
No.
Yeah, be careful.
I always say report. You should always report spam when you see it. Every time I'm like trying to hire a contractor locally and I'm like, I see spam in the results, I feel obligated to report it. And it's pretty often for anything home service related. Unfortunately,
so you could probably be a level 10 by now.
Had you not been doing the edits.
Yeah. It's like 100,000, I think, or something like that you have to get to. Like, honestly, like that's a lot. So,
But what's the
maybe
payoff?
In 5 years.
What's the payoff of level 10?
Just
nothing.
Oh my gosh. It's like a do-nothing machine. That's what that is. All right. Let's talk about local SEO spam for a second. I appreciate you going through that article. And we certainly want to have our listeners go check out that blog post. We'll post it in the show notes. Why is spam so prevalent on Google Maps?
Because it's such a high payoff, right? So I think there's usually, one of two things, right? Either it's a fake listing for a real business. Right. So I'll use law firms as examples because they're notorious for this. So we'll talk to this lawyer, and let's just say they're in California and they, want a higher volume of leads. One of the easiest ways to get this, fastest ways I should say, is just go create like 15 fake listings. Now they all of a sudden have an office in San Diego and LA and San Francisco and San Jose. And so they rank in all these places and they'll get, a huge volume of phone calls. So it's, high payoff and fairly low risk. I mean, the risk is that once you get caught, the listings get removed. But I feel like there's no long-term penalties, for many businesses that are doing this. Yeah. We are just now starting to see some long-term penalties for people. But I'd say until this year, there's like no long-term penalty whatsoever. Like, why not, right? Because generally they keep your real office listing and you don't lose that. Right. So, I think it's one of those things where they need to have some type of penalty and they don't. And then for marketing companies, there's a side of SEO where they, want to do lead gen. And one of the easiest ways to do lead gen is to create fake listings and then sell the leads to businesses because every business wants leads. So we see a lot of those where it's, not even a real business. It's just this fake listing that's called, Car Insurance Toronto. And it forwards these phone calls that come in to actual insurance agents, for example.
Well, there's the bait right there. There's the opportunity, and making it maybe harder on Google side to actually get these listings up because it's very easy. It's too darn easy to create.
It's not that difficult, right? Like, you'll see if you go on Craigslist or sometimes I think even at PubCon last year, there was this guy that was talking about how you could run Facebook ads. And it was kind of, I was just sitting there shaking my head, talking about running Facebook ads to like low income level areas, telling them that you would pay out, $50 to $100 to use their address to verify a listing on Google. And they were targeting low income areas because these people are more likely to want $50 to $100. I'm like, come on. But that's a tactic. So he's talking about using, and it's not that difficult to find an address, right? So find an address on a postcard. again, I'm not trying to give your listeners tactics on how to spam.
No.
I'm just thinking about it from just the business standpoint. Like if you have all the, so if you're like the lawyer example you gave, and you had like a San Diego, a Dallas, and all these different listings. Like if they get a client in Dallas and they try to go to that office, like how does that look from they don't think that through, I guess?
Right. So this is why you normally see spam in business types where they can go to the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see it a lot with home services because, electricians, plumbers, whatever, they're coming to me. I'm not going to their office.
True.
So it's shocking, but we see it also with certain industries in like the medical space. Like I have a dentist client I was looking at the other day and like found like 2 fake listings outranking him and pushing him out of the 3-pack. And I was like, are you kidding? For dentists? Like you have to go to your dentist. But again, I guess these guys have figured out a way to get the phone calls first and then, give the people their address, and maybe someone will show up there, maybe not. But, it's starting to spread to some of those industries where you do actually have to go down.
The practicality is if they actually go visit, then the game's up, right? So they got routing phone numbers and everything else to be able to scoop that up. Oh, we'll come meet you and process the lead that way. But you're absolutely right. Is that
it just seems like it's so much more work than just doing it.
Yeah, I guess it's where it's like, you don't see it for hotels, for example. That's one space we really don't see it with.
It's really service,
Or restaurants.
Now, we've seen a number of service organizations like HVAC get spam in that space, and they come and go regularly, but there's no verifiable address right there, and they could very well be doing service, but the client knows that they've got 2 guys in a truck, and there's that. Now, historically, let's go back in time a little bit, because there was a lot of use of postal boxes and UPS locations, all that, to be able to game the system. So can you give us a little bit of history on some of the older spam techniques and what Google started to go through and smack down like whack-a-mole?
Yeah, it's evolved, right? So I would like to say that the frustrating thing is I've watched it evolve over the last, decade or more. Spammers are always like 3 or 4 steps ahead of Google. So Google catches on to a tactic, but they've already moved on to the next one. So it's sort of this never-ending cycle. But yeah, it used to be PO boxes, used to be really big back in the days. We don't see that a lot anymore. I would say that we see cases all the time on the Google My Business forum where someone will use a PO box and it'll automatically trigger a suspension. So they don't even get live.
Oh, wow.
Good, right?
Yep.
Google's caught on to that. Then we saw a move towards the virtual office space, right? So people get virtual offices. And that worked really well for a few years. Google's definitely onto that now. So we're seeing cases now where, unfortunately, there are some legitimate businesses that work out of co-working spaces, or, let's say they have a Regis office, but they actually rent an actual suite and they actually work there. Mm-hmm. Those businesses are having a really hard time convincing Google they're really there, because there's, for every one of them, there's like 90 that are using a virtual office service at that same address. And so Google just kind of suspends them all. So they are definitely familiar with the virtual office setup. I tell people avoid virtual office locations like the plague. Like it's more headaches than it's worth, even if you really have an office there. And then now we're seeing more like, sometimes they'll use residential addresses and hide their address. And like I was saying earlier, like buy someone or pay someone to use their home address, or they are renting or using other businesses' addresses. So we see this a lot in the legal space with law firms. There's actually law firm A at that address, but law firm B, who does a different type of law, will use their address and verify a listing and then claim that they're there. And we've seen cases where people even go through the trouble of putting up signs at a location to try and prove that they're there,
right? But
they're not actually there. So like there's no one there when you show up during the day, it's locked. But it's amazing the lengths that people will go to again, like lie.
Yeah.
And like they're actually there.
Well, the need for a landline telephone number was also one of those Google verification processes that went through, right? So I don't know how long that stayed around, given the cloud-based virtual phone environments that we're in. But I think at some point in time, you had to have a physical address. You had to have the display of your signage, legitimate business. I mean, this is when Google was doing their drive-bys, and you had to have a physical landline to be able to verify. Am I correct there?
I'm trying to remember. That would have been a long time ago. So that definitely is not the case anymore. But
That was before the age of cell phones.
Yeah, you're old.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, when Google Places first came along, I do think there was some connections between like a landline phone number versus a cell phone number. I don't think that
back in the day.
I haven't heard that reference in a while.
It's a while ago. But I do think that like phone verification is becoming less and less of an option. Like it's very rare to get that as an option on the listing.
Yep.
Because it was so easy to spam, right? So they had to kind of close that loophole.
Yeah, very good. So, it's still a landmine here. You still need to be able to address certain concerns here whenever you're optimizing for local. And can you give kind of the best 5 tips that a business that's just getting started in their local optimization, what they would actually need to do just to keep the line straight, but also the best things that they should do for their business?
Yeah, so I mean, choosing your primary category is an easy thing that a lot of people overlook. We even see SEO companies who hire us to do audits on their clients, and we'll look at their listings. The first thing that jumps out of us is like, oh, they're using a really generic category for their primary category, like lawyer versus criminal justice lawyer, right? So there's, more specific categories will rank better for, like if you were a criminal lawyer, you would not want to use the lawyer category, for example. So that's like a really common thing that we see all the time. And for some industries, that's tough because there are so many categories that describe what they do and they do them all. You have to really be wise about which one you pick for the first one because it holds more ranking weight, which a lot of people don't realize. So since you said you work with HVAC, I'll share like one tactic that works really well there is, if you do both heating and cooling, switch your primary category depending on the season. So in the wintertime, change it. You're going to go do this now. In the heating, winter, you want to switch to heating, and then summer, you switch to AC as the primary category. You'll see a lift in those queries.
So Google wants to be able to see that flexibility because that would sound like almost like a spam signal or something like that. But what you're saying is you have that latitude to change that regularly, huh?
Okay, so let me clarify. Not regularly. Once a year is fine. Like if you're doing it in the winter and in the spring, like no big deal. If you're doing it every day, you'll probably trigger us.
It's cold. It's going to be supposed to snow on Saturday morning. So
we're a snowmobile outfit.
Yeah, so it's literally supposed to snow on Saturday. Yeah, it's supposed to snow on Saturday here in Indy, and then on Sunday, Easter Sunday, it's supposed to be in the 70s. So we should go switch to
shift
heating,
gears. Yeah,
Saturday, cooling Sunday.
Well, we kind of got their PPC campaign that way. We can flip it on and off. So why not change your primary category? No. Joy says don't do that, folks. All right. So another key primary thing that local businesses should do.
Yeah, so just keep in mind, the business name is very important, unfortunately. So if there are different variations of your business name, sometimes people have more than one, name that they could technically use. Definitely, if you have one that is your legitimate name that includes some keywords, use that. Only if it's like your actual legitimate name, though. I'm not telling people to keyword stuff, but it is a huge ranking factor.
Sure.
As well, the page that you link to. So, the link that your website link in the profile, that also has an impact. So, if you're not a multi-location business, let's say you don't have like 10 or 12 locations, often linking to the homepage is a much better move than linking to an inner page. Doesn't work if you're State Farm or, McDonald's, for example.
Sure.
But, for the smaller businesses, we see that. Sorry, how many did you say to give you?
Yeah, let's do 3. And the third one would be?
So reviews are huge, right? So reviews are one of those things I think they are somewhat of a ranking signal, but not as much as people think. A lot of times people think that I have the most reviews, I will rank the highest. It definitely doesn't work that way, but it is a huge, factor on if they choose you versus the other listings. So I think regularly asking customers for reviews and being very familiar with Google's review guidelines is key. A lot of people use tactics to get reviews. They're against Google's guidelines. If someone reports you, they'll get removed. So be very aware of Google's review guidelines. That is a very important thing for anyone.
Yeah, and if you're handing out a gas card to get a review, you're gonna be found
okay.
at some point in time. So I just want you to repeat that for our listeners again. Ranking signals and reviews. If I get more reviews, do I get more rankings?
I think there is a boost. It's been very hard to prove because you can't isolate it, right? So anyone that's getting reviews is also doing a multitude of other things as well. We've seen some cases where we were able to isolate it where, yes, reviews did have a slight ranking boost attached to them. But we've also seen lots of cases where, it's one of the many, 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 many factors, and it's not one of the highest, weighted factors. So, for example, adding keywords to your business name is a much higher factor than reviews are. Same with categories, much higher factor. So it is a small factor, but it is important for people choosing you. So, you could rank, but if you're the first listing and you've got 10 reviews and the guy that's number 2 has like 200, right? You're probably not going to see number 1 for long because the second listing will likely get more clicks and interactions, and that will cause them to outrank you eventually.
Unless you start reporting them as spam, and then probably don't want to do that either, unless you really know what the heck's going on.
Yeah, if they're actually spam, feel free to report them.
So when you're gathering reviews for clients, how do you handle? How do I want to say this? So as best I understand it, to get like the little stars to appear on your SERP, those have to be reviews that are on your website and not listed on Google, correct?
You're talking about like review schema?
Yeah, get the review schema. You have to get reviews to your specific website that are unique reviews to your website that are not on Google. Is that accurate?
Oh boy, you want to go down this rabbit hole, huh?
I'm just saying, if you say get reviews, right? But there's Yelp, there's Google, there's your website. How are you divvying that up? I should say.
Yeah, so Google My Business is usually our top priority because that tends to have the highest kind of ROI attached to it. So we usually try to get people to go there first. I'd say second, Yelp is very, very, very important, but it's also extremely challenging. So you're not allowed to ask for reviews. So we do not include Yelp in the list of places we ask for reviews. But if it comes up in conversation, when they're meeting with people and they know that they're an active Yelp user, it's helpful to mention, hey, I have a Yelp profile, but I'm not asking you to review me because that's against their terms. Something along that line. Review schema on your website is definitely very, very, very important as well. We've seen, usually by adding review schema, it'll increase click-through rate by like somewhere between 100 to 400%.
Holy Hannah.
So yeah, huge impact. As far as whether or not you use your own reviews versus whether you can mark up third-party reviews, that is a highly debated topic in our industry. My stance is that it is okay to mark up third-party reviews, provided they're not Yelp, because Yelp cares about that. But we have definitely marked up Google reviews for clients that don't use third-party tools. Like we use GatherUp, for example, for all of our clients, and they, get your own first-party reviews, so you're safe. But there's some clients that don't want to do it for whatever reason. We've never seen Google act on that policy ever. So they may say, like, you may see an article here and there saying, like, don't mark up third-party reviews. But I've never seen Google issue any type of penalty whatsoever for businesses doing that.
And that is the tactic to be able to get those review stars on your SERP listing, right?
Yeah, on your website organically, if you want those gold stars, you do have to add review schema. And if you don't have your own, like, again, if you're not utilizing a tool like GatherUp, you have to mark up a third-party review that is visible on your website. So there's all these rules. It's kind of like could be a whole topic, right? But having those on your site is definitely a huge boost to click-through rate.
Very good.
For sure.
Well, Joy, it's been a joy. I'm gathering you've heard that quite a bunch, right?
It's not the first time.
We really enjoyed unpacking local. And what?
You said enjoyed.
Oh my gosh. I'm just being joyful. I'm sorry. Hey, it's clearly that you know your stuff in local SEO, and we certainly want to recommend our followers find your information and follow you because you guys are doing some bang up job of defining the path, because there is such myths, and it used to be myths in SEO collectively, but local SEO, there's still such a gray cloud over this. It's kind of weird that it hasn't really been defined and well organized. And I guess that's just the nature of this moving beast of local SEO, right?
I like to dispel myths all the time, but it's shocking. So much, like after so many years, we get the same questions that I've like half the conferences I speak at, people raise their hands and ask the exact same questions about things that are not true. And I'm like, how do you not know this?
Oh, very good. Well, we always wrap up our show with a couple questions just to find out from the subject matter expert what's going on in their mind when it comes down to their industry. So first and foremost, what bugs you about your industry right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been talking about probably my number one pet peeve, which would be, Google's inability to get a handle on how to deal with fake reviews. I think, fake listings are one thing. Fake reviews are scarier because they are becoming easier and easier to miss. And they kind of, the people that are getting fake reviews on Google are kind of getting away with it. So that is a growing trend that is becoming more and more popular for all business types, right? Like anything, restaurants, drug rehabs, all the way to, dentists and whatnot. We see fake reviews in almost every single industry. So that is really frustrating, something I have not seen any progress on Google's part. If anything, it's gotten worse over the years.
Are you thinking that's going to improve as that area gets monetized a little bit more?
I'm not holding my breath. I feel like a lot of the other sites haven't got a handle on it either.
Yeah.
The only site that has done a good job at removing fake reviews is Yelp. They are the only platform that actually has a good system, automated system. But they are also an extreme because you go to Yelp and you get more negative reviews than you get positive reviews because of the filter. So it's like, they're the only ones that have managed to, like, it's really hard to get fake reviews on Yelp, like very hard.
Well, to their credit, because they certainly got handed a bad swing there a couple of years back. They had to really button up and clean up their act a good deal. So conversely, what excites you about your industry right now?
Yeah, so one thing that's really exciting about Google My Business, some people are like, oh, Google's going to make it paid, or, they're going to do away with free listings. I think that's, again, another myth. But they have been pushing out features like crazy. You guys mentioned one at the beginning of the show, but I know there are a lot more in the works that are coming later this year that are pretty exciting. One kind of perk of being a Google My Business product expert is they do tell us some stuff that we can't talk about before it happens. So there are definitely some exciting things that are coming, and we've seen the last few years, like they've been crunching out features like posts and Q&A and all kinds of stuff like crazy. So, I mean, it's hard to keep on top of, which is why I started this timeline that's on our website. It's a free resource, but it's like literally tracks all the changes that happen, and I update it weekly. It's crazy, but I like it. I love the fact that it's constantly changing. So
that URL for everybody who wants to know the timeline, if we have it on the screen, let's throw it up there. It's sterlingsky.ca/Google-local-changes, and that is the chronology of changes over time on the Google places in the Google My Business spaces. So we want our users, our listeners, to jump in there, and that's a really nice page, and it gives a great authority of what has happened and what will be happening in the future, right? You're gonna share a little bit more on that, right? No.
Yeah, I don't put things on there until they've happened.
Okay, fine.
Like, it's present day.
Oh, very good. All right, so that's a wrap. Any final thoughts for the aspiring local SEO business?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm very active on Twitter. So anyone that's, on Twitter, I'd say if you want to know what's going on in local, feel free to follow me on Twitter. But, it's just something that you got to remember to keep an eye out for things, because whatever was happening yesterday will probably be different tomorrow. So it's just constantly changing. That's
a foregone conclusion. The sands are shifting all the time, and we look to authorities like you to help straighten it out for us. So thank you so much. We want to promote your training guide. That's localu.org/experts-guide-local-SEO. So thank you again for doing that type of good work out there, giving us some ongoing information. We want to make sure that the Twitter user or Twitter followers of Edge join you on Twitter at Joy Hawkins, and over on Facebook at Sterling Sky Inc., and as well as LinkedIn over at Joy Hawkins, right?
That's correct.
Those are the spaces. All right. Well, we thank you so much, Joy, for being part of the show and helping debunk some of the local SEO myths.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. All right. That's a wrap for this version of Edge of the Web Radio. I do want to bring up one thing. We certainly want to extend appreciation for Tom Broadbeck. He's been doing this show for 311 shows, and he's going to be leaving us and going into a different career path. I just want to express how valuable everything has been that you've been able to produce here, and it's going to be tough, but thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
No, thanks. I've enjoyed it. Sitting in the first couple and learning from you over the 7 years that we've done the show. It's been a lot of fun. But yeah, definitely won't be a stranger to the show.
Okay, I have to swing back around and be a contributor to the show.
There we go, maybe.
Very good. Well, we certainly appreciate and wish you all the best of luck in the world, man.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to edgeofthewebradio.com, and a special thank you to all of our colleagues at Site Strategics. We want to make sure you check out everything that we're writing on Site Strategics as well as Edge of the Web. Special thank you to our guest, Joy Hawkins. We want to make sure you track her down and follow her information about local SEO on a regular basis. Be sure to check out all the videos and audio and much more over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. Do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.